name's Rebecca. I eat books, and I'm home in my house. Today's July 1st. I've been on a road trip for 2 months. I left May 5th. Or 4th or something like that. Just about 2 months we've been on the road. Wow! I can't believe it's over. I can't believe I have to go back to work in a couple days. Time of my life. So I wanted to check in, say hi, and do like a very brief brag about my trip. And talk about all the books I read while I was gone. And show you all the book mail I got while I was gone. Okay? Okay? Let's do it. So, brief recap of the trip. A lot more saved on highlights on the gram if you are so interested. The point of the trip was to hike as much as possible. We got to visit a lot of national parks. Also, I went to an obscene amount of bookstores. The very first stop was dropping Hush Puppy off at his grandparents, where he was taken incredible care of. We went to a wedding in Charlottesville with one of my very best friends, and it was beautiful, and I had so much fun. And then we drove all the way to Ann Arbor, went to Literati on a wreck from y'all, drove to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, hiked along Lake Superior. Beautiful, amazing, wonderful. Started driving west, Badlands, South Dakota National Park, to Minneapolis. That was the wrong order. We're gonna mess things up on around here. An amazing bookstore in Dinkytown. Montana. Montana was my absolute favorite place on the trip. We spent over a week there between Bozeman and Missoula, hiking, playing. An amazing bookstore in Bozeman called Shakespeare something, the same as the bookstore in Paris. Shakespeare & Co. From there we kept going west. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, beautiful lake. Portland was so good. We stayed in a beautiful Airbnb in the Mississippi district. Y'all gave me the best food recs, and we ate so well. Italian at a place called Lucha, Russian food at Kachka, Sweetie D, tacos at Porque No, Thai food at Eam. And we hiked in the Columbia River Gorge every day, and I got to meet CJ in real life. CJ of CJ Reed's fame. We didn't take a picture because we were too busy having fun. We went to Powell's. I was so lucky to catch her before she left Portland and moved away, and it was wonderful. And guys, she's cool in real life. And then so much time in Washington State, Olympic National Park, Orcas Island, on the water, Seattle, lots of hiking, lots of beach walking. I got to meet the linen librarian, Julie, in Seattle. She's amazing. Probably could have talked to her for days. Could have sat with her and talked for days. Don't look at my dirty fingernails. 2 months of waiting is a lot of waiting. Julie, linen librarian, a total gem. Bend, Oregon. California. I spent a night with my best girls, who I've talked about on here before as my book club. We meet on Zoom. This time we got to meet in an Airbnb in wine country. I've been in that book club for over 5 years. Started when I lived in California, and we've kept it up on Zoom because I'm the luckiest girl in the world. A real highlight of the trip. Stayed in the Bay Area with family. So good. So good. Drove all the way down California to San Diego. Never been there before. Had another beautiful wedding there. Started working our way west. We're almost done, I promise. Saguaro National Park in Arizona. New Mexico. Guadalupe Mountain National Park in Texas. Had never heard of it. Just found it on a map. Go there. It was amazing. Memphis, Tennessee. Oxford, Mississippi. Atlanta, Georgia. Spent 3 amazing nights with my girl, Lindsay. You know who Lindsay is if you've watched a single video on this channel, because I talk about her all the time. I feature her all the time when I can. It was so wonderful. We ate and cooked and ate and cooked and read. Here comes Hush Puppy. Hey! Hey, buddy. And we hung out, cuddled. She spoiled me, and she made me the most beautiful pavlova. And it was bliss. I miss her already. And then we drove to DC to see my parents. And now we are home, and it is wild. And there's so much to do. Laundry, yard work, groceries, and here I am. That was my trip. The other crazy thing that happened while I was gone is that this channel hit 4K. That's crazy. I haven't done a Q&A since 2K, so we're doing it. Pop your 4K Q&A questions downstairs. I will also put a post up on the grams asking for questions about anything, books, my makeup routine. That's a joke. I'm not wearing any makeup. Hush puppies, interests, fears, dreams, desires. Ask away. I won't necessarily answer it, but you can ask whatever you want. Okay, let's talk about books. How many books did I read on this trip? Not as many as I thought I would, but a couple of them are big boys. I think like 12. Okay. Most of these I don't have because when I got to Atlanta, I dumped them on Lindsay. If I still have them, it means either I didn't love it or Lindsay had already read it. Companion piece, did give that one to Lindsay. This is Ali Smith's new novel, generously gifted to me by Pantheon. This book, as it says in the title, is a companion piece to the seasonal quartet. If you read spring, fall, you know what the seasons are, and you liked it. This builds on those themes. Some of the same characters pop up. Very Ali Smith. When I think Ali Smith, I think of two things: social commentary and wordplay. Very heavy on the wordplay, very clever, very much a COVID novel. If you are not ready for a COVID novel, you are not ready for companion piece. I really enjoyed it. The last, third, she goes to the Middle Ages, which is an obvious choice for a plague book. A lot of people are doing it right now. Everyone's doing it. And you know what? I'm into it. Haven't read a Middle Ages throwback book yet that I didn't love. Matrix, Your Mother's a Witch. I haven't read Lapona, but everyone's doing it and it works for me. So I know a lot of people were not pleased by the ending of Companion Piece. Don't know what to tell you. I will say that I hope that after this, Ali Smith slows down. I would love to read another Ali Smith that took years of writing and editing and feels very thought out, considered, intentional. I am incredibly impressed by the seasonal quartet, and there's so much happening in the world that there is no lack of material, but I would love to see something a little less timely from Ali. I know you were curious, Ali Smith, what I want from you. That's what I want. Thank you for asking. Okay, the next book I read was the biggest flop of the bunch for me. I know a lot of people liked it. I really didn't. This book, Small Things Like These, by Claire Keegan, takes place in a sweet little Irish town and tells the story based on true events about abusive convents holding and mistreating young women, especially impregnated young women. Claire Keegan chooses to tell this story of something really traumatic and terrible that happened to women from a man's perspective and have this man be the hero at the end of the book and save everyone, and the women are all secondary or tertiary characters. Even the character who we see trapped in a closet begging for her life barely has any dimension at all. I found that very frustrating. This I do not recommend. The next book I read was kindly sent to me by Knopf, Avalon, the new release by Nell Zink. I'm a big Zink head. I love her. I think she's so funny. She has a very specific sense of humor that really works for me. Definitely an acquired taste, not for everyone, but I'm into it. This book is about a young woman who is growing up in Southern LA. She is in her teens, falls for a man with a lot of knowledge in the way that sometimes young women think that being with men with information gives us access to that information. It's about figuring out who you are, what you want to be, art, all of these things. I highly recommend you listen to Zink on the LA Review of Books podcast from a few weeks ago. She is unhinged. She is wonderful. She is kooky. Not for everyone, but I do the Zink. I dig the Zink. Okay, the next book I read was on my Kindle, In the Distance by Hernan Diaz, and I loved it. It's a rewrite of the classic Western trope, which is why I read it for this trip as I was exploring out west. We have our main character who is an immigrant. It's also like a rewriting of the classic immigrant story. He is traveling out west, and because this is a solo journey, the book is incredibly interior. It might be the most interior book I've ever read. He almost hardly ever interacts with other people. The book is really about the vast wilderness of the interior, of the self. No matter how ginormous this country might seem if you were trying to traverse it on foot, the expanse of our inner selves are always going to be larger, wilder, and crazier. Hernan Diaz has a new book out called Trust, and I'm pumped about it, and I recommended it to my book club ladies as our next read. So we'll read that soon and discuss it over the Zoom. Okay, the next book I read, I definitely left with Lindsay. It was Nightwood by Juna Barnes. This book is wild, extremely stylistically modernist, Ulysses-esque, or perhaps Ulysses is Nightwood-esque. to be determined. Weird and stream of consciousness. When I was reading it at first, I was actually texting with Lindsay about how I was wrestling with it. And in not so many words, she was like, don't just surrender to it. Let it be what it is. Don't try to wrestle it into something else. And that was great advice. I loved the ending. It's not an easy read. It asks a lot of its reader, but it was totally worth it for me. The ending was beautiful. It is about love, transgressive, lesbian, gay love. We have a genderqueer character, and the book is from the 1920s or 30s. It's written in Europe in between World War I and World War II, which is extremely progressive. It definitely reads like it's from that time. It discusses race as being the issue of Jewish and non-Jewish. It has problematic things to say about Judaism, but it's the 1930s in Europe, so it is a product of its time. It was amazing. It discusses this idea of loving this person who is unattainable, who is feral, who wanders at night. Night is this metaphor for the time when things are queer, when things are gay, when things that are not what happens in the daylight can happen. Yeah, it's a great read. Okay, next I read The Last Samurai. Look how big this is. It's a big boy. I loved it. We have a child narrator for like 2/3 of the book named Ludo. Ludo is the child of a academic recluse who is trying to figure out who his father is. His mother is obsessed with this movie, which has 7 samurai who are trying to... not important. He tries out potential fathers to fill this role for him after being disappointed by discovering who his real father is. Beautiful, funny, never falls into tropes or gimmicks in the most impressive way to me. First of all, our main character Ludo is this incredible genius prodigy child. You might think that's a character I've read before, but it really isn't. And his mother is struggling immensely with mental illness, and you might think that's a character you've read before, and it really wasn't for me. The juxtaposition of a kid who knows everything except for that his mother is sick. He doesn't comprehend. She's his whole life, so he has no comparison. Generally, the juxtaposition of vast amounts of knowledge acquired through reading, but such minimal knowledge acquired through experience of life because he's so young. Matchups written so thoughtfully. I loved that. Also, this book just experiments so much with form, font, language in all of these ways that never felt gimmicky to me. It is ambitious, challenging. It asks you to challenge your own assumptions of what a novel is, of what a novel can be. Big recommend. Next, I read The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula Le Guin. My first Le Guin, maybe my first sci-fi, probably not, but maybe. Really stepped out of the box with that one. I loved it. It was so fun. Our main character has dreams that change reality. His doctor, he goes to see a doctor, a psychiatrist about it, and the doctor decides to use this immense power to his own benefit, but also the benefit of the world at large, and you'll be shocked to hear that playing God doesn't go well. Parts of it got a little cheesy for me. There are aliens at the end that I didn't find like super necessary. Personally, I find it hard to find a necessary alien. Otherwise, I really liked it. I read the book because it takes place in Portland. We spent some time there on this trip. It is a great place book. It's a great setting-based book. I had a lot of fun with all of the references, Mount Hood, outlying neighborhoods and the bridges and all of that. Very much set in Portland, so that was really fun. Okay, next I read As You Were by Elaine Feeney. This is another Irish book with similar themes actually to Small Things Like These. This is about a wry, funny, thinky woman who discovers she's dying. She's very sick. She's in the hospital and she is not being honest with her family about what's happening. They think she's been admitted for like a cold, basically. She hasn't told anybody in her life that it is terminal. The book does an amazing job of putting you in the place of this character because the entire book takes place in that hospital room. She is confined to this room, to this hospital ward, so you as the reader are too. You definitely feel a little bit of that claustrophobia. She shares her room or area of the hospital with a few other people. We get to learn a ton about each of them based on their phone calls and their visits from family, what is happening to them and what the nurses say to them when they come in. It's extremely a cast of character book. It is very heavy on character. The story of this book is this fact that each of these characters have their own unique narratives. All of their stories share a theme of the impact that the Catholic Church and traditional Irish society has had on themselves, their families, their parents, their mothers, their daughters. Gave a lot of context to that culture to me. As you were. Okay, next I read Indelicacy by Mina Kane. As far as the deliciousness of the writing and the language, this is probably of this pile as good as it gets for me. I just love the words on these pages so much. The ending rocked my world, didn't love it, wasn't expecting it. Main character Victoria, she's in a total aesthete that loves beauty, anti-capitalist to her core. She's not about ambition or acquiring things. She exists on the planet to find and enjoy and make beautiful things. And she loves her female friends. An ode to female friendship. We only see men as means to an end of comfort, access to class, a deep respect for the women in our lives. Ultimately, I find her actions at the end of the book to be a betrayal to women, which I found deeply frustrating, surprising, but I am absolutely hooked on Mina Kane. I will read everything she ever writes. I think she has a book coming out later this year about writing that I'm very excited about. And did I mention that like the male characters are all side characters, female centric? Next I read Lucy by Jamaica Kincaid. So good. For me, this is the ultimate coming of age New York City book. We don't need anything else. A million coming of age in New York City books. They exist. We know that. This is the only one that matters as far as I'm concerned. We have Lucy, who has come over from Antigua to be a live-in au pair or nanny for a rich, wealthy white family. She sees right through their bullshit, perfectly sassy and bitchy and disappointed. She's not impressed by they're not blinding her with any of that. She is a fantastic, witty, hilarious narrator. I loved this book. Next I read Of Woman Born by Adrienne Rich. This is not my first Adrienne Rich. I think this is my third Adrienne Rich, and it's probably not my favorite. It is good. It is genius. It's Adrienne Rich. It's genius. But first of all, it operates a little bit on a false premise. The premise of the book is that all humans on the planet are born of women, which we know is not true. The book is written in the 70s, is extremely radical in many ways, but falls short on that front. I think is just missing so much potential. The book starts with a history of patriarchal societies versus matrilineal societies, incredibly well researched. She talks a lot about the history of the science of labor. It made me want to be a midwife. Midwifery is amazing. The way that labor had been taken over in history by male doctors away from female community-based midwives is a really interesting story I personally knew nothing about. And my absolute favorite section of the book was this second or third to last towards the end. She talks about her own complicated relationship with her mother and her sons. It was Adrienne, perfectly Adrienne. I love her. And lastly, I read Member of the Wedding by Carson McCullers. This book is maybe the best child narrator I've ever read. Narrated by Frankie/F. Jasmine. She decides to change her name halfway through, and it is so well done. The omniscient narrator just starts calling her the other name. So good. Frankie, or F. Jasmine, is 14. It's the summer of her 14th year. I've never ever read anything that so perfectly captures the insanity and madness of being between girlhood and womanhood. To be in a summer and have that free time and the heat and be figuring all these things out. I have no idea how Carson does it, but she captures that so, to me, in a way that just rang incredibly true. Too true. Too true, you know what I'm saying? This was great. Those are the books that I read on this trip. I want to show you the pile of mail I got. We'll just go quickly through the book mail I got while I was gone, and that's it. Ready? Okay. 1,000 Coils of Fear by Olivia Wenzel. Translated from the German, sent to me by Catapult. A young woman attends a play about the fall of the Berlin Wall and realizes she's the only black person in the audience. She and her boyfriend hang out by a lake outside Berlin, and 4 neo-Nazis show up. This sounds very good. Weimar, Germany, and Berlin. Sold. Strangers to Ourselves, Unsettled Minds, and the Stories That Make Us, Rachel Vive. This is an FSG. I'm really excited about this. It's supposed to be incredibly well reported. Rachel Aviv is a staff writer at The New Yorker. It's a debut. Aviv writes about people who've come up against the limits of psychiatric explanation. I know that the chapters are all names of people that she takes as case studies in there. It humanizes their psychiatric experiences. Excited to read this one. I have so much reading to do. The Novelist by Jordan Castro, sent to me by Softskull. Thank you, Softskull. You're the sweetest. I love you. In Jordan Castro's inventive, funny, and surprisingly tender first novel, we follow a young man over the course of a single morning as he tries and fails to write an autobiographical novel. I think this is like a very Twitter, internet, attention economy book. Should be good. Ill Feelings by Alice Hattrick. In 1995, Alice Hattrick's mother collapsed with pneumonia. She never fully recovered and was eventually diagnosed with ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, and then Alice got ill. Their symptoms mirrored their mother's and appeared to have no physical cause. They received the same diagnosis. Ill Feelings blends memoir, medical history, biography, and literary nonfiction. Sent to me by Feminist Press. Really excited about this one. Hurricane Girl by Marcy Jermansky. I know that Marcy Jermansky has published a lot of other stuff. I've never read anything by them. I did listen to an interview on the Brad Listy, Other People podcast about this book. It sounds wild. It sounds like a horror film, like a funny horror. A Category 3 hurricane makes landfall. Is that a glass vase he smashed on her skull? Does she really love the brain surgeon who saved her life, or is she just using him for his swimming pool? Sounds crazy. The Garden of Broken Things, a novel by Francesca Momplaisir. Genevieve, a single mother, flies from New York to Port-au-Prince with her teenage son Miles. The trip is meant to be an education, a chance to learn about his family's roots. But when the country is rocked by a massive earthquake, decimating the city and putting their lives at risk, their visit becomes a nightmare of survival. That sounds hard to read. The Displacements, a novel by Bruce Holsinger. Holsinger was a professor of mine at UVA. He taught all of the English classes, like all the survey English classes. I loved him, so I was interested to read this one. I think it's a Cli-Fi Miami climate fiction, climate apocalypse book. I wasn't expecting it to be this big. We'll see if I get to this soon. Wonderfully Sent to Me by Riverhead, who I love. I think this is the pile of ones I'm most excited about. Pig Years. This is a nonfiction by Ellen Gatiss about working on a farm. As a farmer in upstate New York and Vermont, living hand to mouth but in love with the land and its creatures, Ellen Gatiss understands the delicate balance between loss and gain. While small farmers struggle to survive, Gatiss draws us into a violent and gorgeous world where pigs are star-bright symbols of hope. Great. A Strange Woman by Leyla Erbil. This is deep vellum, translated from Turkish. The first novel by a Turkish woman to ever be nominated for the Nobel. A Strange Woman tells the story of Nermin, a young poet in Istanbul. In 4 parts, Strange Woman details the coming of age of a young Turkish woman and of the Turkish Republic as told from different perspectives. This rebellious avant-garde novel tackles sexuality, politics, and psychology. That sounds really good to me. And then also from Vellum, they sent me Diary of a Film, which sounds so good. An auteur, together with his lead actors, is at a prestigious European festival to premiere his latest film. Alone one morning at a backstreet cafe, he strikes up a conversation with a local woman who takes him on a walk to uncover the city's secrets, historic and personal. As the walk unwinds, a story of love and tragedy emerges. Released to immense excitement in the UK, this is a novel about cinema, flaneurs, and queer love. Fuck, that sounds so good. Revenge of the Scapegoat. I'm really excited to read this. I've seen it around. I've been really excited about this one. Satire that joyfully embraces the strange and fantastical. Broadly inclusive skewering of academia, the medical industry, and the contemporary art scene. I love a skewering. Iris is an adjunct at a city arts college. Love it. Very excited about that one. So excited for these last 2. Okay, first we have Elizabeth Finch, sent to me by Knopf. This is the newest Julian Barnes. It's gonna be so freaking good. Beautiful spare novel of platonic unrequited love springs into being around the singular character of the stoic exacting professor Elizabeth Finch. I love an academic woman story. Lastly, Delphi, a novel by Claire Pollard. As our unnamed narrator, a classics academic navigates the tightening grip of lockdown, a marriage in crisis, and a 10-year-old son. She becomes fixated on forms of ancient prophecy and prediction. I know that Claire Pollard is a published poet, and I've talked about this a a million times, but I just think poets write the very best novels in the world. I have so many books I want to read. I bought a lot of books at bookstores. I took some books home from Lindsay's house. I have so much reading to do. Okay. That's the stack. Thanks for being here. I missed you guys. Thanks for everybody who checked in on me via the gram while I was gone. I'm back. I'm gonna record some vlogs. I'm definitely gonna do a 4K Q&A. So put those 4K Q&A questions downstairs. Read any of these books that I just got in the mail? Tell me where to start. I love you. Tell me the best thing you've done this summer so far. Okay. Love you, nerds. Talk to you soon. Bye.